40 weeks, 280 days, 6,720 hours. This is the time needed to bring another human being to this earth. 40 weeks of joy, sorrow, pain, and elation. Pregnancy is the sole reason any of us are here. Today we'll be talking about the space in between conception and birth, and the interruption that is miscarriage. Joining me today is Kesha Isaac-Adams, playwright, writer, hard worker, but most importantly, mother. Having been on the journey, she'll share with us the moments that mean the most to her and her family, the ups and downs and everything in between. Just how tied to one's perception of womanhood is the ability to get pregnant. Are we doing enough to care for women who are? And what about the ways that society treats miscarriage? Let's get into the real conversation. Thank you for joining us, Kesha.
My pleasure.
Now, in 2021, an estimated 23 million women were estimated to have miscarriages. That's approximately 44 miscarriages per minute.
Oh, wow.
Now, the topic at hand today is not only one that's sensitive to me, but I know also for yourself.
Yes.
You've struggled through 3 miscarriages, correct?
Yes.
Okay, walk us through a little bit of your experiences with miscarriages.
Okay, so in 2014, I gave birth to my daughter. She was the first. And so, I was like, oh, it would be really good if I had like the second one shortly after so that the two of them could just grow up together and get out of Pampers the same time and they'll be best friends, And because I grew up with my brothers, I didn't get a sister until I was like in my 20s. And it's not like I was trying to get pregnant, but it so happened that I did get pregnant with the second baby. And in 2015, when I was about roughly 19, almost 20 weeks, I was teaching when I really shouldn't have been teaching because I had other ailments. But at the time, my job kind of was in jeopardy and I didn't want to lose my job. So I went to work. The conditions weren't the best. I went and it became very stressful. And one day, it was a Thursday, and my stomach started hurting real bad, like cramping. So I called a friend. He came, he got me because my husband couldn't leave work at the time. He came, he got me, he took me home. I called the doctor. The doctor said, rest. And if it continued happening over the weekend, go straight to the hospital. Mm-hmm. But if nothing happened when you rested, come and see me the Monday. And it just so happened that I rested and everything calmed down. Everything was fine. And then the Monday we got ready, we went to the doctor. And while I was waiting for my turn, I started cramping real bad. And it was so bad that the receptionist said, take her to the hospital. We got to the hospital and I stepped out of the car and I had on a white skirt. And I looked down and I was drenched in blood.
Wow.
And I started wailing. I was like, okay. A stranger, she got a wheelchair. She came and she got me and rushed me into outpatient because they were renovating A&E at the time. Mm-hmm. So we had to go into outpatient. And the experience in the hospital for that miscarriage was awful. It was already traumatizing that I was losing the baby. But then the way in which I was treated and everything while I was there made it 50 times worse. than it could have been. But the worst part of that particular day was after everything was finished later in the day. I was just like, where is she? Because it was a girl. And the next morning or later the night, I really don't even remember, when the doctor came to see me, I asked him, what did they do with her? And he said that they normally discard them in the incinerator because she wasn't viable. And I was crushed again, because it's like, if I could see her face and I could see that she's a girl, she's a she, and she has features, she had 10 fingers, 10 toes, she was made, and then you look at me and you said, we just throw her in the garbage, not even just in the garbage, we just throw her in the fire with the trash because she wasn't viable according to the medical journals and everything. So I didn't get the opportunity to really, process her demise and everything. Shortly after that, I actually found myself pregnant again, and I took precautions to take it easier that go around. But again, 2 weeks before I actually lost the baby, I went for my checks. Everything was A-okay. And then 2 weeks after that, my cervix just spontaneously opened. And I was at the doctor's when he checked it and he saw what was happening. And he said, okay, so the baby is coming down and I could take her to the hospital and try and get her back up because it was another girl. I could try and get her back up. I can't make any promises, but I can try. And I said, well, I prefer that you try, and it doesn't work, then you just not try at all, right? And we went to the hospital, we went to surgery, and I went to sleep. I woke up and it was like, as soon as I woke up, I knew my water had broken. The nurses wouldn't tell me, but I knew my water had broken and that was the end of it. What the doctor said happened was that I had food in my stomach because I went to the doctor in the morning. I didn't know I was going to go in for surgery, so I had breakfast. And they had to tip me on an incline, basically my head down, so that they could allow gravity to let the baby go back up and then stitch me. But when they tipped me that way, the food went up and I started choking. So they had to make a choice to save me. So they tilted me the other direction so that the food would go back down and gravity, the baby came down. Both times I had to push them out. The first one was still alive when she was born, but it didn't take really long for her to expire. And then the second one, she died inside, and I had to push her out like that. Yeah.
Wow. So each time, as I'm listening to your story, each time even though they're miscarriages, the perception is that a miscarriage is a miscarriage. But the experiences that you just went through with each one seems to have very different details.
Yes.
How do you think, or what do you think should be done regarding more, where the medical system is concerned, and where society on a larger scale is concerned, regarding just lending more support and having just a better level of understanding and knowledge for pregnancy and sensitivities to pregnancy and women being pregnant?
Okay, you see that word, sensitivity?
Yes.
Everybody needs sensitivity.
It's intentional. It's
Everybody
intentional.
needs sensitivity training. Everybody, whether you're a teacher, a doctor, a nurse, or especially the medical staff. You would think that because they choose to be medical personnel, that it would be inherent to their jobs, that they would be sensitive, they would be caring, because their first call to duty is first do no harm.
Yes.
But they don't think that when they respond to you in a particular tone, they're doing you harm. They're just like, I just answering you. Like, but it's not that. It's your negative energy. It's the way in which you speak to me. I'm already going through all of this, and listen to how you're talking to me. For example, after I lost the first baby and they wheeled me to the room finally, because all of the drama that happened down at outpatient. And when they finally took me to the room, a nurse was there. And when they wheeled me in, she looked at me and she was like, "Why you got your face like that? Fix your face." And I'm like, "What?" Uh, that's a strange thing to say, but I couldn't process it properly at the time. And then they had put the drips in my right hand. I'm right-handed, so everything I do is it's my dominant hand. And they put me on a bed that was too low for me to do anything. Nobody cranked it up or anything. They just left. And then they brought supper. So I'm like, I haven't eaten since morning. I'm very weak. Let me try and get something to eat. But when the nurse brought in the food, the tray was too high. And she never asked me if I wanted help. And she just put it down and left. So I had to try and pull myself up. And then when I finally opened it, it was soup. Okay, this looks like something, good to eat after you've lost all that energy. So I opened the napkin with the utensil. It was a fork. I was like, okay, let me try and drink the tea at the very least, get something hot. It was cold. So I called my husband and asked him, please make some tea for me and bring me 2 sandwiches before I don't die up here. I can't. I just can't. They're not sensitive. The jobs. Like one time I described the civil service as being very uncivil. It's a very cruel place to be. And people would be upset because you're a civil servant and you would say these things. But I have been in the civil service since I was 19. I'm 40 now. And it's like, it's not changing in terms of their empathy towards persons and their conditions. Like, apart from having all of these miscarriages, I have an underlying condition, which is lupus, and it's on my file. But they get upset with me when I'm sick. But the truth of the matter is there are some tasks, since I'm not teaching anymore, there are some tasks that I can do from home. And they've refused me to work at home. When I went back out to work, and everything happened, when it was time to go back to work, I had to beg them not to send me back to the school where I had the miscarriage. And they couldn't understand the trauma that I experienced, why I wouldn't want to go back there. Because I'm like, it was stressful. And I begged for 5 weeks. I begged my job for relief. I begged them to send a teacher. I begged 5 weeks. Every other day I asked, when are you sending someone? When is somebody coming to take my place? Because when you sent me out, this wasn't what you sent me to do. The grade 6 teacher just happened to get called over to the high school. So I ended up getting stuck with grade 6. But you said it would only be temporary. When are you sending? And again, because I was fearful, because back then I wasn't as outspoken, I would take things and everything, and it cost me my children. It cost me. So it's not even just them, it's for us as well to know what our rights are, and also for us to put ourselves first, because if I died, they would find somebody else to take my place.
Exactly.
Immediately.
Exactly.
Right? They would sing an off-key song at my funeral, and they would give me a half-dead wreath. The chances are somebody gonna teeth off my grave anyway. So, no.
So, Kesha, do you think that some of the insensitivities that you personally experienced, do you think that they come from a place of just a lack of knowledge and understanding, but also from just there being no empathy within that system, as you explained, would require for persons to have empathy?
Okay, so the first thing we would have to look at is our cultural roots in terms of how we see these things,
Hmm.
right? And then we have to look at our levels of emotional intelligence. A lot of us, sad to say, in our society do not have the emotional intelligence to process certain things,
Hmm.
and that is rooted in our cultural heritage, right? Um, what I mean by that, culturally, we are not taught to overly express our feelings. We are taught to shut up about things. You know, you're a child and you get licks, and the next question is, what you're crying for? You want something to cry for? I'm
Hmm.
like, you just beat me. That's a stupid question, right? I'm hurt. I'm not just hurt physically, but I feel a way because you beat me. And that's the answer. But they tell you, shut up. Otherwise, you get more.
Hmm.
When you suffer some emotional hurt, like for example, you're in a relationship and it ends and you're mopey about it, and your friends are like, girl, just get over him, you know? Just move on. You got more fish in the sea. They don't want to give you the time to process the end of that relationship. Then you have things like death. People are like, you know, they're in a better place. It's okay, you know, God knew best, you know, and they don't give you the space and the time to grieve in the way that you want to grieve. Like, you're still going on about that, you're still with that. And I have gotten a lot of things that I have and I could identify as cultural repetition. I miscarried, and persons in my church, women especially,
Mm.
which is sad to say, like, you know, you're young, you could get a next one. I had my first child when I was, what, 30, 31? So I was like, that is not young to be having children, right? Based on how they clock childbearing
Yes.
age.
Yes.
From the time you're in your 30s, they start to clock you as being geriatric in
Hmm.
terms of pregnancy. I think that's insulting, but you know, that's what the medical books say. But yeah, I got, you're young, you can make another one.
Yeah.
Um, oh, be grateful you got one. I'm like, I can be grateful because I am very grateful for the one that I have. But I also grieve the loss of my children. I've lost three, two of whom were developed, and one, I have no idea what that would have turned out to be because it just was not developing properly. And at 6 weeks, it was the end. And actually, I was given the choice of either doing the DNC at the hospital or taking the pills and letting it come out at home. And
Hmm.
because of how I was treated at the hospital, I opted to go through it at
At home.
home. And it was excruciating. You know, my husband comforted me, and I could see the pain on his face because I was in so much pain and everything, but I couldn't help him and he couldn't help me except to hold my hand through it. It was as if I was having a baby, but it felt like my whole body was turning inside out. And after all of that, after enduring all of that, and still being able to stand and smile and encourage others, I still have to bear people in society saying, you're still crying over that? I, yeah, and it's a cultural thing because the generation that my parents belong to, um, they did not have that space and the opportunity to actually express how they felt, so they never developed it.
Yes.
So they don't know how to respond to a situation that that calls for large amounts of emotional response. It's unfortunate, but hopefully, going forward, the children that we have now, a lot of them are children are apt to be very, very emotional, and we cut it out of them
Yes.
instead of allowing them so that they could develop into well-rounded human beings. Hopefully, we don't spoil all of them, and some of them can, survive the torment of adults.
Well, you touched on 2 points there that I would love for you to expound on for a minute. One is you mentioned your husband's support.
Yes.
There are a lot of people who they feel bad when you tell them about these experiences. They empathize, but they have no idea how to aid you in
Yes,
your recovery.
that is true.
Psychologically, they don't physically, they don't know if they should be around, if they should give you your space. And then, second to that is the society that you talk about, and this misconception of certain things, and the pressure and expectations that these misconceptions actually put on women to not only get pregnant, but almost dictate how it is that we are to feel and navigate through the course of pregnancy and even miscarriages.
Oh, yes.
So I'd like you to, the first part of that is, how would you tell people,
That was the
okay,
support.
how do you lend that support to somebody that you love? And even on a larger scale, how does a society step up to really be that support to someone in your case?
Okay, so let's deal with that one first. The thing about whether you have a miscarriage or you're pregnant and you actually gave birth, the support systems that are needed are roughly the same, because you've had a child. Whether the child survived, yes or not, doesn't matter. You've gone through the process and you've had a child. You don't have the child to bring home, so that would lend for more emotional support, right? But if you're pregnant and you give birth, you need persons around who can help, who are willing to help, whether they cook food and you freeze it so that you don't have to be worried about that, especially if you have a working partner. Or they come over and help to clean the house. Sometimes you just need somebody to sit and watch a movie with you, because it's not always you need somebody to say anything.
Yes.
Because a lot of people end up saying the wrong things. So it's better if they just don't say anything. They just
listen.
come, they bring 2 malts, let's have a drink.
Yeah.
Let's watch a movie, let's hear some KFC, something, they just come to spend time, keep your company, because sometimes you just need a distraction from your own thoughts, from your own feelings, because it's so easy to sink down into the darkness. You just need a lifeline to pull you back out. I remember when I got married, because I grew up with brothers, as I said, I gravitated towards guys more than I gravitated towards girls in terms of being friends. And as an adult, I still had like a lot of male friends. My husband, I met him with a lot of female friends. It never bothered me, and my friends never bothered him. We got married, and then majority of my friends disappeared. And when I called several of them and I asked them, well, what's that about? They're like, oh, I was giving you space. You're newly married. I didn't want to disturb you. I'm like, so if you take yourself away from me and that person goes away and this person goes away, what does that leave me? I can't just be married.
Yes.
I have to have my friends, because suppose something happens and it's because of my husband, then I have nobody if all of you leave, right? I still don't have a lot of friends now because of that, because some of them insisted, because that's how they would want it. I'm like, but that's not how my husband operates. That's not how I operate. So you are free and welcome to come by me, just like you used to do before. Come, you can sit with me and my husband. You can come have a drink with us. He doesn't mind, because I entertain his friends as well, right? So it's a type of loneliness when people leave
I can
thinking
see
that they're
that.
doing the
And I
right
can see
thing.
the suffering in your eyes
Yeah.
even now, but I know that you explaining that just now, I know that you've actually helped a lot of people because you just gave me some new information as to how to help my friends.
So, your second question
Yes.
about the expectations on women. Now, it's so funny because the other day I noted that surprisingly the war between the sexes is increasing. It's getting hotter. Like you have all these men. My husband calls them hoteps. You have all these men talking about what women do. What do you bring to the table? And I'm like, if any man ever asked me that when I was actually in the dating scene,
Yeah.
I would say nothing, absolutely nothing. You can leave me alone. You don't want to have anything to do with me because I don't bring anything. And when a woman says, but I will take care of the home and I will do all of that. Oh, well, I can do that myself. When you hear a man say that, say, then you don't need a woman. Why are you pestering anybody? And I've listened to the different ones that are like, oh, women only want money from men. But then on the same token, you hear men saying, but we are the providers. But if how it's set up is that you're the givers and we're the takers, why do you have a problem with us taking? Now, I do understand that there are some women that really go overboard with the taking.
Yeah.
But the way in which the war of words is heating up, I find it to be very interesting. Now, that being said, you have this continuous expectation on women where the reproductive system is concerned. One, we are majority of the times held completely responsible for it. Whether we get pregnant or not is completely on us.
Yes.
Because apparently we did it to ourselves, right? It was always, you have to take your birth control, not I have to wear a condom. I don't like condoms. So you have to make sure you're prepared. But then I also saw a conversation with men saying, if I ever went to a woman's house and she pulled out the condom, I'm going to bounce because what kind of woman walks around with condoms? And me and my girlfriend screaming at the TV, the ones who don't want to get pregnant. And now you see in America the war on women and their reproductive rights. They're telling women whether you get raped or it's incest or any of those bad things, whether you're able to feed this child, take care of this child, whether you have the emotional aptitude to deal with this baby, or even if you have genetic markers that would make this child very sick and their quality of life very poor, you're still going to have this baby. It doesn't matter if you're 10 or 50, you are going to have this baby. That is what America is saying. So you have now opened up this space where more women are going to die because they're going to go to back alleys again because that's what they used to do before. Before abortion was legal, that's what they used to do. Go in the back alleys or take a wire hanger, and it destroys you. And I think that's where that statistic came from that says once you've had an abortion, it lowers your chances of having another baby by 50%, right? But if you're in a situation where you can't help it, what then? Miscarriages, the technical term for miscarriages is actually a spontaneous abortion. Now, when I had my miscarriage and my doctor wrote that on my form to take into my job, and I saw it, I took it back and I said to him, take it off, write miscarriage, because the term abortion is negative.
Yes.
I know what you mean by a spontaneous miscarriage because I know I did not intentionally lose my baby, but that's not what society is going to see. They're going to conveniently avoid that word on the paper, spontaneous. They're just going to look at abortion and then they're going to lay the blame at my feet. They're going to tell me I should have been resting. I didn't eat properly. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. It's my fault. And whether they say it or not, the looks at which they give a woman, the things they just say in society, a woman feels responsible when the baby doesn't make it. They forget that once we get pregnant, it's 1 foot in and 1 foot out of the grave. They're not concerned about that. I heard one of my coworkers say one time, and I was so mad. Like, I was mad at him for like weeks on end. I ended up putting what he said in one of my plays. He said, I am not getting married to any woman unless she could breed. I was like, I hate that word. I hate that word. It sounds like you're dealing with horses. And what do you mean? He go, no, I have to make sure she walk in first. I go, but you're making it sound like it's machinery. I'm like, suppose you are the problem. He said, I can't be the problem because I already have one. So that means that I'm working. I'm like, a lot of people have one, and that's all they get, one, because the equipment stops working after that. I'm like, that's not how it works. It's not that because you have one, it means you have infinity of children to have. So she not getting pregnant might have nothing to do with her. But for men to actually sit back and go, I might be the problem.
Yes.
It's not something that's forthcoming. You have some men who are mature enough, emotionally sound enough in that area, where they can actually say, let's all go and get tested and see what the issue is. That is a man. That is a mature man. But then majority would be like, no, I'm a man, and they have all this toxic masculinity going on about them. And if I can't have children, then what am I? I'm not a man. But they don't realize that we feel the same way. That if we cannot have children, it diminishes our worth as a woman. And it takes so much, encouragement, woman to woman, for us to understand that whether we can bring forth children or not, it doesn't take away from who and what we are. We are still women. We were born as women, and it doesn't matter whether we have one or none. Nothing is going to change that, right? So all of this, nonsense about it's a woman's job to procreate. Actually, it's not. It's not. We're just the ovens. We're just the ovens. It's a man's job to do that. A man can get 365 women pregnant in 1 year. A woman can only get pregnant twice a year, and that's not advised. So let's say once.
Now, you touched on something that that pulls out my heartstrings, because when I went through my experiences, we talk about the expectations and the pressure from society, but what about the expectations and the pressure that we put on ourselves as women? Because from my experience, I felt like I was betrayed by my own body. So what do you say to women who have put that pressure on themselves? And how do they cope with that, the psychological effects of that? Just feeling like, as a woman, the thing that society tells you should make you a woman, that you are now deficient in that area. How do we get through that as women?
The truth of that is I'm still learning. I'm still learning because it's an ongoing journey. It's like grief.
It is.
Grief never actually ends. You just learn to live with it, right? So that voice that comes in every now and again to remind you that you failed as a woman, you failed to bring forth that child, you failed to keep that child healthy, it comes back. Sometimes when you're in the best mood, it just comes back. And sometimes you have to stand up and go, not today, Satan, not today. But I would encourage any woman who is going through that to get therapy, it helps, right? I always advocate for Jesus and therapy. Both of them work, right? And there's no shame in getting therapy. And I know that's another societal thing that people like to keep on the hush. Because if you're seeing a therapist, then it must be that you're crazy. But no, it's
very
sometimes
taboo in our
yes, it is.
society.
But sometimes you just need somebody who isn't going to judge you. Sometimes you just need somebody to guide you through it. And somebody just give you some pointers. You know, this is how you can approach this or whatever. But it's just an ongoing fight. But we can't be hard on ourselves. We have to practice self-love. We have to practice forgiveness of self, which is really hard. I think it's actually easier to forgive other people than it is to forgive yourself, because you hold yourself to a higher standard than you would hold other people. You know, I should know better. I should have done better. I should have exercised. I should have eaten healthier. I should have. And then sometimes you have to sit back and go, I woulda, coulda, shoulda. I didn't. And it's okay. I'm still here. Whether or not anything happens going forward, I'm still here. And I have to look after me.
Kesha, I am a firm believer in a community concept. In an ideal world, men understand everything about women, and from menstruation to pregnancies to miscarriages. But unfortunately and sadly, we do not live in an ideal world. So a part of us living and going through these different experiences comes learning and teaching moments.
Yes.
And I do believe that we have a responsibility to teach people through our experiences. They are not just meant for us to learn from, but also for us to teach others. And so with that in mind, when I say a community concept, you mentioned earlier that, you know, just having that support and people being able to understand what it is that you're experiencing as women and putting some of that blame and shame onto ourselves. How do you feel the role of women and the interpersonal relationships with other women? How do you feel that role plays in how well we do at actually coping and not just surviving, but thriving in this landscape? Because, like it or not, miscarriages are a part of life. They will continue to happen.
I laughed because I have said more than a couple times that we are our own worst enemies as women. I swear sometimes women take the side of men more than they take the side of women, even though they should understand what the woman is going through more so. But I guess that doesn't happen as much as we would like because we're so different. Every woman, even if we're born with the same parts, we're still so very different, and we never experience the same thing the same way. You know, I made a Facebook post the other day saying, you know, I really don't like people who don't have any period pains. I think it's unfair. And you know, like a lot of my friends came under the post. And I'm like, oh, I don't have any. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, shh, we're not talking to you. We're not speaking to you today. But it's the same thing, you know. I had a male gynecologist, and he is famous for saying pregnancy is not a sickness, right? But for some, it is. For some, it is. When I was in fifth form, one of my friends said she was going to see her mom in the hospital because she just had a baby. And I was like, your mother had a baby? Because we're like 16, you know? Like your mother having babies, like all right now, so, you know? And we went, and there was a lady on the opposite side of the room, and she was from Nevis, and she was brought down and put on bed rest for the whole 9 months because she had lost like 4 or 5 children before.
Wow.
So this was like a last ditch effort to have a baby. So they put her on complete bed rest. And I ended up going back to comb her hair like the day after because she asked me if I could help her. And I said, sure. And I found out that that baby survived, right? And, now that I'm like older and I look back on that, I said, look at what a simple thing was that helped her. She didn't have to worry about her hair for at least that week because I was there and I was able to help her. And it would be so good if we could just step out as women and just hold each other up a little bit more. Understand that, when we are hurting, because you're a woman and because this could happen to you, that you could extend a little bit more grace than we're doing now. There's like so much space for it.
Do you think that maybe there's a feeling of this can't happen to me because of the misconceptions about miscarriages?
Some people think that because they they exercise, they're healthy, they eat healthily and everything, that they're in tip-top shape and therefore their reproductive system is going to work just fine. But I've seen people who were fit drop dead. So you just never know.
Yes.
Some people look very good on the outside, but then when they get a check on the inside, it's all wrong.
Yes. In saying all of this, and my mom had 5 children, and she's a twin, she's a fraternal twin, and so we were all certain that one of her kids by now would have already had twins. Hasn't happened yet. So, I mean, what we're saying here is that there is no rule of law when it comes to these things. This is a matter of just what is to be. This is a matter of will. This is a matter of, some will even say, chances, because you are kind of taking a chance.
Yes.
You're taking a chance with your life. You're taking a chance with, your mental health, because you have no idea what the outcome is going to be. So I'm really happy that you came here today and you shared all of this with us, with me, with everybody. And with my own experience, I think that you've shed a lot of light on so much. And I wish that I had that sisterhood at that point in my life. I wish I had someone telling me the things that now I know better for. So what I would ask you before we go is, if you had one thing to say to women, if you had one thing to say to women specifically, and then one thing to say to the society as a whole, what would those 2 things be? Or would it be one thing that simply works for both?
The latter.
Okay.
I was actually thinking, if I could say one thing to everybody, women and society at large, it would be have more grace. Have more grace for self and have more grace for each other, because we all need it. And grace goes a long way in every aspect, physically, psychologically, emotionally. It goes a long way.
Thank you so much. You have been a very gracious guest. And honestly, I think that, and this is just from me to you, from my heart to yours, I think that those 3 lost kids would have been blessed to have had you as their mom. Yeah.
Oh, I have the first one to keep me on my toes.
Well, kudos. High five to that. Thanks for joining us on The Real Conversation. This discussion was just the beginning. We've only scratched the surface of pregnancy matters. So let's hop onto social media and keep the conversation going. You can find us here, here, and here. And remember, be kind to yourself and to each other, because when we know better, we can do better. Until next time.